Hi, welcome to today. My name is Lynn Hoerauf, and this is Relational Effectiveness, where we're looking at ways to have more effective relationships. And this one might be considered a way to have a better effectiveness or more effective relationship with yourself. We're looking at motivation, and I know we've had motivation at times. We've done our things, and good for you, good for me. And then there's times we've been just uninspired, unmotivated, not sure how to get through this thing. And today is another look at a new way to look at motivation. Yesterday was lower order motivation, and today is higher order motivation. So John Hoerauf, my husband, is going to speak on this. He calls this authentic motivation. So stay tuned, let it inspire you, and to, I hope, breathe new life into what you want to accomplish.
In the last video, we talked about lower order motivations and how they tend to be the traditional way of looking at things. And the biggest problem with them, even though they can bring change, they tend to not bring lasting change because they're always looking outward to be filled with something to continue. They need to get their energy from outside. Generally, that's our willpower. I suppose if you're on probation, it could be the law and the ankle bracelet that's motivating you to stay in the house, but it's an outside force that's trying to continue maintaining the change that you're looking for. And that change tends to not really happen deeply and not be long term. So today we're going to look at higher order motivations. Now there's a lot here with this, and they actually come in positive and negative situations. And I'll explain that in a minute. Higher order motivations, think about the law of gravity versus the law of aerodynamics. The law of gravity says anything that you drop falls toward the center of the earth. So a several ton metal tube in the sky is going to fall to the ground. Well, why do airplanes fly instead of fall to the ground? Well, they're under a higher law, the law of aerodynamics, which says if there's wings attached and they're aligned in a certain way and there's enough force coming at the plane and all that kind of thing, that several tons of metal stays up in the air. Now that doesn't get rid of the law of gravity, because as soon as the law of aerodynamics isn't in play anymore, when you turn the engines off, then the law of gravity takes back over. But the law of aerodynamics is kind of a higher law. It supersedes the law of gravity, if you think of it that way. Higher order motivations can overshadow our conscious motivations and derail them a lot of times. That desire, I mentioned being at a picnic, and let's say you're dieting and you're not going to eat anything that's unhealthy for you, but then they have your favorite barbecue chicken there and they have your favorite kind of desserts, and those higher order motivations behind the scenes kind of take over and you end up doing what you don't want to do. Think of higher order motivations as they're loud, but they're not obvious. People that live by a train track, people that live by power lines. There's a loud, constant noise with power lines. There's a loud noise when the train goes by, but after you live there for a while, you don't even notice it anymore. It's kind of like that. You might have ringing in your ears that goes on for years, and after a while, you don't really pay attention to it anymore. It's always there, but you get used to it, so you kind of forget that it's there. And so what needs to happen is we need to either alter these higher order motivations or embrace them so that we can live out our best life. What we need to do is see what they are, to discover what they are, and decide if they're helpful to us or if they're working against our actual desires. Now, the ones that work against us, I'm going to call those toxic motivations. And here's another definition for you to consider. Toxic motivations are internal beliefs, voices, or drives that attempt to manipulate our will to bring our circumstances into alignment with their beliefs. Because they are higher order motivations, they ultimately supersede our best attempts to bring about change using lower order motivations as the change agent. And that's kind of a mouthful. Higher order motivations are these beliefs inside of us that we're not aware of, but they're there. They're those voices in our head. And then they attempt to live out their desires through our choices. But because they're higher order, they supersede our willpower, our desires in the long run. Our willpower can overcome them for a while, but especially if we don't know where they're there, they end up winning out. So what's some examples of a higher order motivation? It might be negative names. In other words, you were given a name at birth, but as you were raised, you got a lot of other names. It might have been from the kids in the playground. Maybe you weren't as good in sports, and so they called you klutzy. And so you grew up believing that you're just not very good at sports. You can't handle yourself physically. Or maybe you didn't do well in math, and so the other kids called you dumb. And you just grew up believing, well, I'm just not very good at school. That's not my thing. Or maybe it was from a parent. You didn't meet up to your brother or sister. Or it could have come from anywhere, that these negative names that come in, that we hear this characteristic about ourselves so many times that ultimately we take it on as an identity. And then if I'm trying to do something, maybe let's take it to just a weight issue. Let's say I was raised and I was a fat kid, and that's just who I believe I am. And so now as an adult, I decide I need to lose weight. Again, that person had a heart attack. I need to lose weight so that I can get healthier. But if I see myself as a fat guy trying to lose weight, I'll be able to keep up this momentum for a while, but ultimately I'm fighting against this internal belief of who I am, this higher order motivation that says, no, you're fat. That's just who you are. So you can lose weight for a while, but you're going to gain it back. And eventually my willpower dies out and I just gain it back and I fall back into what I believe about myself. These false beliefs about who you are and what you can accomplish. I can never make a lot of money. I could never be good at owning my own business. Maybe I've always wanted to, but that's just not me. I'm not good at that. That it creates an inaccurate identity inside of us about who we are and what we can actually do and accomplish. Sometimes that higher order motivation is that belief that the most important thing is comfort. I need to have comfort. And if I'm doing something that's not comfortable, I'm going to go running every morning, and this morning it's cold and rainy. Well, I'm not going to want to do that because I'm going to gravitate toward what brings comfort to me. Or maybe it's distraction, that I believe when I run into something difficult, the way that I learn to deal with it is to distract myself. And so that way I don't have to face it. And that has become a lifestyle for me. Now I don't see it, I don't realize it's there, but that's the way I keep going. And so then when I'm starting to do something, anytime you're making lifestyle changes, it's going to bring up emotions and issues and different things inside of you because you're changing how you're normally doing things. And then when that pressure is there, that might bring up fears, it might bring up that uncomfortableness, and then your way of dealing with that is distraction. So that higher order motivation, the way to bring balance is to bring distraction. You find yourself just sitting on the couch watching TV or playing a game on the internet or just doing other things instead of what you had intended to do. And all of a sudden your whole day has gone by and there's no time to do that anymore. So these toxic motivations can come in. And in the future, we'll get more into some examples of what that is. But what I want you to see in this, first of all, that the lower order motivations are the way that we tend to look at things. The way we tend to look at motivation is just to grit it out and make a change. But that doesn't last because there's this higher order motivation going on behind the scenes that we're often not aware of. And higher order motivations can be toxic. And those toxic motivations are the things, those false beliefs about ourselves, those false names, the unhealthy ways of dealing with stress, dealing with differences that we have with people or when we're angry or whatever it might be. And they kick in without us really thinking about it, and they influence us to get off track of what we really want to do. So what we're going to look at next is just touch a little bit on how to make a deeper change as we look at those higher order motivations. And as we look at the toxic motivations, how can we change our beliefs about ourselves to then start making the real long-term changes that we're looking for?
Thank you, John. That is so awesome. And I also want to thank the Strategic Advisor Board for sponsoring this video today. I appreciate you all being here, and I just hope and I'm rooting for you for great things to happen this year, that 2023 would really be the year that you would accomplish and to attain some of the dreams that you've had in your heart. So here's to you, and I'll see you again.